What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and if you're cramming for your Dynasty rookie draft, this is the perfect video for you because today I am going to break down my top 25 Dynasty rookie rankings for this 2025 draft class. And the idea behind this video is that if you just woke up from a coma and had to get into a Dynasty rookie draft tomorrow, this would be the only video you need to watch. I'm going to essentially empty my brain of all the stats and info I have for all of these players. We're going to go 25 players deep, tier by tier, and talk through these new landing spots, the official draft capital we have for each player now, and then also talk about the value pockets and tier breaks and flat tiers as it pertains to the landscape of this class. So with all that being said, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and the first player we're going to talk about at the 101 is Ashton Jeanty. Now these rankings are for Superflex and 1.5 tight end premium leagues. I feel like that is the gold standard in Dynasty, and of course, if you want access to my top 50. I'm working on getting it to a top 60 Dynasty rookie rankings. You can find that on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Links to that will be in the description and the comment section down below. And all of my prospect models are also official with official draft capital. And I'm working on getting my full top 250 Dynasty rankings done by tomorrow night. Now, with that being said, let's talk about Ashton Jeanty, but not for too long, all right? He's the 101. He's been the prince who has promised this entire time. He goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, 6th overall. And he joins this list of running backs to go top 10 since 2015. It is Saquon, Zeke Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Ashton Jeanty, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Todd Gurley. Every single one of these players has a top 5 finish in fantasy football. He is in the perfect spot. There is no annoying running back in his way, and he gets Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator in Las Vegas. The quarterback used to be stinky in Las Vegas, but now you get Geno Smith, who's not bad, and Chip Kelly has been a head coach for 4 years, right? The Eagles for a little bit, and then San Fran for 1 year. Each of those years, he ranked 4th, 7th, 11th, and 5th in rush attempts, so he's going to run the ball a ton. It should be a serviceable offense. Ashton Jeanty is a top 5 running back in all formats. Now, moving on from that, we're going to get into our early first tier. This is, your 102 to like 105-ish area. This is a jumbled tier. And this is the point of these tiers, is that you can order the tiers however you would like. This is how I personally see it. And this one's polarizing. I've talked about this all draft cycle, and I get a lot of pushback on Travis Hunter 102, right? He goes 5th overall to the Jaguars. He's my wide receiver 1, the top of this tier. And I just want to explain myself. So this one's going to be long-winded when it comes to Travis Hunter. I should have like timestamps by tier for this video. But let me just get on my soapbox for Travis Hunter here, because there's a lot of people coming at this with a lot of certainty, right? Where they're talking about, oh, well, Travis Hunter's going to play a lot of corner. He's a gimmick. They traded up for jersey sales. These are real things I've been hearing. So let me just kind of talk about why I'm so high on Travis Hunter and what I think is going to happen from a real-life football perspective. And the first thing you have to think about is the Jaguars traded their 5th overall pick, their 36th overall pick, a 4th-round pick, and their 2026 first to go up to 2 overall and move up 3 spots. They mortgaged their future for this player. And I keep calling him a receiver because he kind of has to play receiver now if that's what they spent. This is a really good couple of charts here from Hayden Winks. He works at Underdog. He does great work with Josh Norris. And this is from his top 100 big board, where he kind of breaks down positional scarcity and kind of what the premium positions are in the NFL in the modern era. Now, of course, it's always been quarterback, and then it's been edge, and it's been offensive lineman, but it's a little bit different in the modern NFL. If you remember this past offseason, Jamar Chase for a hot second there was the highest paid non-quarterback. And if you look here at the average salary for the top 5 at each position, wide receiver is only behind quarterback and edge, whereas corner is more in the middle of this chart. And on top of that, they're really hard to find in free agency. We see all the time these free agent wide receivers, they get overpaid, right? That's how you see Christian Kirk get a huge deal. Calvin Ridley gets a huge deal. Even Diami Brown this past offseason got a big deal. Stephon Diggs got a lot of money too. It's hard to find wide receivers. Very rarely do you see a big name wide receiver that's elite and really good hit free agency. All these guys get traded, right? A.J. Brown, traded. Odell Beckham in his prime, traded. All of these guys, like, you can't find a wide receiver outside of the draft or via trade. And when you do trade for these guys like DK Metcalf, you're sending a second and then you're paying the guy $30+ million a year. With Travis Hunter, you have him cost controlled on a rookie deal, and he plays wide receiver, which is now a premium position that you can't find in free agency. So again, to justify the price, he probably has to major in wide receiver and minor in corner, as Daniel Jeremiah said, and I mentioned that last week. And you can see here in terms of how you can replicate positions through free agency, wide receivers in this bottom right of really tough players to find in free agency up there with like quarterbacks, whereas corner is kind of replaceable in the top left, positions like linebacker and center and running back. So what I'm trying to say is if you're going to move all of that capital, you're kind of betting on him to play wide receiver. And on top of that, this is an offensive coach who made this move or, had his hand in making the move. And right after the draft, he was asked, what is your vision for Travis Hunter? Do you see him playing more on offense? Liam Cohen said we'll have a plan right now of him playing primarily on offense, with him learning the defensive system and practicing on the defensive side of the ball, as well as throughout this offseason program. So it seems like they're leaning to have him on offense. There's also a higher incentive for him to play on offense the better he is. So it's almost like this correlated bet where when you draft him, you're drafting him to be a really good wide receiver. And the thing is that if you're right in your conviction that he's a good wide receiver, the better he is at wide receiver, the more that his snaps and playing time will slant towards wide receiver, if you get what I'm saying. And my base expectation is they try and do both ways early on with a slant towards offense, right? Maybe like 75% of the offense in terms of snaps, maybe like 50% of the defense in terms of snaps, and kind of see how it goes from there. And I think he's just going to crush in terms of his yards per route run, in terms of his production on the small amount of routes. And it's going to be really tough for them to keep him off the field. And then heading into year 2, we're going to see all this hype where it's like, oh my God, his yards per route run is up there with OBJ and rookie Justin Jefferson, and all of the hype in the offseason is Travis Hunter's going to be fully unleashed this year, and all of a sudden he's a 1-2 turn pick. And that's my baseline expectation. Now, why I think that he's so good is because he is elite at all areas of playing wide receiver: before the catch, at the catch point, and after the catch point. Before the catch, he has a 92nd percentile win rate versus man, 97th versus zone, 97th versus press. That is via reception perception with Matt Harmon. This is somebody that Matt Harmon is calling prime Odell Beckham Jr. as a comp. Then you can go down to contested catch rate, right? So this is at the catch point. He has a 63.3% career contested catch rate. That is 95th percentile among all of the prospects in my database. Then after the catch, he's a special mover with a 94th percentile, 27.7% missed tackles forced per reception. So he creates separation, and on the off chance that he's not open and you throw him a 50-50 ball, it's really a 60-40 ball. And then on the off chance that he catches it in stride, he makes people miss. He doesn't go down on first contact. He's just a special player. And the only reason we don't see him as a Malik Neighbors level, legendary wide receiver prospect is because he wasn't a full-time receiver until year 3. So what I'm trying to say is that if you account and you give the proper context for that, he is, in terms of a wide receiver prospect, in the same bucket as the Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. And now in the NFL, where a GM has mortgaged his future and needs you to play wide receiver because of the premium position that it is now comparative to a corner, I think we're now going to get a much higher slant towards just offense in the NFL, whereas in college it was much more, pulling from both ways. So that's how I feel about him. On top of that, you get Liam Cohen, who was top 10 in pass attempts last year, and I am a believer in Trevor Lawrence. Before that, I was even fine with him at 102, even when he was on the Browns and his quarterback was Joe Flacco, right? Last week when we did pre-draft rookie mocks. Then on top of that, yes, Brian Thomas Jr. is there, but I don't think that right now we have to worry about who's better, right? It could be a Chase versus Higgins thing, but both of them were amazing last year, and we don't know which one of these guys will be Chase or which one will be Higgins, and there should be plenty of pass attempts to go around. The third option on this team is like Brenton Strange and Diami Brown and Gabriel Davis, so it's just not really a concern for me in terms of the target distribution on day 1. Now, moving on from that, again, I told you that was going to be long-winded. We have our 103. He goes first round to the Chargers. We have Amarian Hampton. He gets first-round draft capital, locks that up, goes to a great landing spot where Greg Roman, Harbaugh, they want to run the ball. Last year, they tried to run the ball, but in terms of, I was looking at it, the teams that have, top 12 in rush attempts, they had one of the worst yards per carry. So they wanted to run the ball, they just couldn't do it efficiently. I think that Amarian Hampton now helps them with that. They have a good offensive line already in place with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. You're going to be tied to Justin Herbert. Really the only elephant in the room and kind of awkward spot here with Hampton is that they paid Najee Harris. Now, in terms of his actual contract, he is the 21st highest paid running back in terms of cap hit for 2025 and is likely a very short-term option. I think it's only a one-year deal. He has had 280-plus touches in every year of his career. That should go way down now that he's not on his rookie deal and that the Steelers don't feel obligated to give him touches. But he's going to make things annoying early on, right? Like, think Breece Hall with Michael Carter. Think Jahmyr Gibbs with David Montgomery. think Javonte Williams with Melvin Gordon was another one from years past, but first-round draft capital is first-round draft capital. I think it's one of those things where, especially in redraft, it'll be annoying for like maybe weeks 1 through 8, and then after that, we'll see kind of wheels up, really solid finish at the end of the year, kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs' rookie campaign. You can even do Bijan and Tyler Algier was kind of a similar concern as well, but I'm not really all that concerned. Again, it's really not a ton invested into RB2. It'll be annoying early on, but I think that he'll finish strong enough that he becomes this like elite dynasty asset. And why I have him ranked 103 here is just that running back is so weak that if he can just perform at expectation, we're talking about a top 5 running back in dynasty, and he's already kind of flirting with that kind of ranking. I got to sit down once I'm done with this video and go through the dynasty rankings, but I think I would have him flirting with the top 5, probably right there. After the top 3, what you're looking at like Saquon, you could definitely make a case for Hampton over Saquon in Dynasty on day 1. Now, my 104, I haven't really moved off of having Cam Ward in this area. Nothing changes here, right? We knew he was going to go first overall to the Titans. He does. The annoying part, or maybe not the annoying part, but the sad part, is that the hope for at least me was they had an early second-round pick. The hope was that they go Luther Burden or maybe a falling Egbuka there, and that didn't happen. So the only weapons they added via the draft was no tight end, I don't think. It was just Tyler Lockett before the draft, so they made like a free agent signing of a dusty vet, Chamir DK, Alec Iomanner in the 4th, and then UDFA Restrepo, which is like kind of interesting because of the connection, but we even saw last year like Troy Franklin was okay with Bo Nix, but this is about as low as you can rank a first overall quarterback in Superflex. I did some research on rookie draft ADP as it pertains to startup ADP. So I went back to 2019. I found a rookie's startup ADP in year 1 in May. So that's like right after the draft. And then their startup ADP in year 2 in May of that year, right? So Kyler Murray, May ADP of 2019, May ADP of 2020. Now, of course, it was a different game back then, right? Like, no way first overall Kyler is going and pick 40 of startups this year. But it does kind of just show you the value gained or if, like, a player was a hit. And for a lot of these guys, it's really tough to lose value, right? Of course, Kyler gained a ton of value. Joe Burrow did. But even guys like A-Rich, Will Levis, Zach Wilson, they gained startup value. And even guys who didn't have great rookie years, right? Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. There's only 2 quarterbacks on this list to lose more than a round of startup ADP in value. So Cam Ward is going to hold a lot of value. If you don't see the upside with him, then I would encourage you to do one of 2 things. Either just draft Cam Ward and he should hold value and you can kind of figure out what to do with it later. Because like pretty much the way that you should be viewing Cam Ward is you're taking like your 104 and you're just converting it into value. That of course has upside, right? He is a pocket quarterback, but we have seen guys like Joe Burrow crush as a rookie, right, where then he flies up to the 9.5 of startup ADP. We saw it with CJ Stroud, right? He flies up to the 4.3 of startup ADP. He could very easily have 85th, 90th percentile season and get skyrocketed up to the first, second round of startups. If he doesn't, I think the floor is very high. Or you could take that 104 and start trading it into future classes, right? Can you do the 104 for a 26 first, a 27 first, and like maybe a little sweetener on top? Those are things I would be exploring if you're not crazy about Cam Ward, but it's tough for me to have him much lower than that. Moving on, we have the 105. And again, if you wanted to put this guy as high as 102, I wouldn't scoff at you, but for me, he's my 105. And here's why. He locks in 8th overall draft capital, right? He goes 8th overall to the Panthers, and it just barely leaves him out of the elite tier when it comes to my prospect model. Now, you're going to ask, like, what is the prospect model? What does elite mean? What does gold mean? And essentially just a way of bucketing the RS grades, which is my prospect model. It just takes into account, 0 through 10. It's a grading scale based on that. How likely are you to score points per game in your first 3 years? It outscores draft capital. It's something that I've kind of used as a compass, a North Star in fantasy, and I revamped it this offseason. And Tet, he is at 8.49. Like, by the skin of his chinny chin, he is not elite. But I don't think it's worth getting caught up on that. That's why I still have him in this tier with a bunch of elites. I have him ranked over some other elites too. I'm treating him as a low-end elite wide receiver. And if you wanted to run with that and rank him higher, you absolutely could. I just have a tough time because I believe Hunter's a better receiver. Round 1 running back Hampton is really tough to overlook. And then a first overall quarterback. To me, those are all really tough profiles to overlook for Tet McMillan. But if you wanted to, you absolutely could. And I think where he ranks on this list of just kind of this bucket of wide receiver prospects, I think somewhere between Drake London and Mike Williams is actually a great comp for Tet McMillan. Just really solid all around. Bigger receivers in terms of Drake London and Mike Williams there. And he gets Carolina. I think the big emphasis here is that he locked in 8th overall draft capital when there were a lot of reports of him slipping. I think Todd McShay had him at like outside of his top 50, which is just nuts. Some of these guys were running crazy with the Tet McMillan slander, but Carolina stamps him 8th overall. It's a decent spot, right? Bryce Young has some upside to make another step. You have Dave Canales, who, in theory, can coach a good offense. And I think that that's enough where he can be the number one target on this team, right? You're talking about like Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, no one that's a real target hog on this offense. So I think it's a good spot. It's a fine spot. And 105 feels too low, but I think that that just speaks to how close this tier is here in the early first. But moving on from that, let's get to the mid-first tier. And this is where I think that there's still really, really good players. If I had anything inside of like the top 7 or 8 picks, I would feel really good about it. And I don't mind, like, if you can move from like the 103 to the 105, you should. But I think most leagues will kind of be hip to that. But let's talk about Quinshon Judkins as my 106. He goes in the early second round to the Cleveland Browns. And it's a little bit yucky on paper, but he's going to get the first crack at workhorse duties to kind of take over in the Stefanski offense for Nick Chubb. You can see he falls into this bucket with early round 2 draft capital as an elite running back in the model. So that's right below legendary as a really high-end prospect in my database, and that puts him in this bucket of early round 2, but still going inside the top 50 picks. It's Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Quinshon Judkins, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Matt Forte, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon. All of them have top 12 point per game finishes, and there's a lot of high-end names on this list. And when it comes to Judkins, I just don't want to overthink it. I get that they drafted Dylan Sampson. That's a little bit worrisome, but at the end of the day, he's a day 3 pick. He slid in the draft. We don't know how good he is. And he also wasn't a great pass catcher at Tennessee. He, for a guy who's a little bit more undersized, you would have wanted more pass catching from him. So I don't know. I think he'll be kind of a relief back between the tackles, and we'll see how things work out here. But in terms of Quinshon Judkins' early workload, it should be pretty solid. This is Mike Clay's early projections over on ESPN. He has Genty at RB6. So this is just in terms of redraft fantasy scoring in 2025. He has Genty, then Hampton, then Judkins, then Harvey, then Caleb, then Trevion Henderson, then Scatabo. So RB27 for Judkins in his rookie year, I think, is really strong. It's a fine offensive line. Quarterback's a little tough. You're kind of hoping for a better one in 2026. But I think that the size, speed, where he got drafted, the kind of workhorse role he's going to get, he, to me, profiles a lot like a young Joe Mixon. And to me, that's exciting, especially at the 106. Now, if you wanted to take Trevion Henderson here, you absolutely could. He is my RB4. He is my 107. And he is a strong prospect in his own right. I just have a very small tier break where Judkins is elite, Henderson is gold. I will say when you look at the actual difference between gold and elite, it's not all that crazy, right? Where elite running backs have an 84% hit rate at top 12 seasons, but 13.9 points per game through their first 3 seasons. That's not a huge downgrade to just 12.71 points per game through their first 3 seasons. The floor is just a lot lower, where it's only a 50% hit rate of top 12 seasons. So I'm leaning with Judkins, leaning with the elite prospect, leaning on a team that drafted him before Henderson, and then also I think has a little bit more volume to go around for him. Now, with Henderson, I will say I think Mike Clay is doing him dirty at RB36, but I think that speaks to, as much as we are putting respect on Dylan Sampson, I feel like the dynasty market's not really adjusting for Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. Even if you think that they're dust, they are both tough running backs to be running mates with because they're both 3-down skill sets, right? Ramondre can play first and second down. He's a big body who catches passes. Same deal with Antonio Gibson. So it's not just like an annoying PPR back or someone like a Gus Edwards who's only between the tackles. Those are two profiles that catch passes and can run between the tackles. So it's a little bit murky, but I do love Trevion Henderson, elite efficiency type back, kind of like a James Cook, Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs, somewhere on that spectrum. And then he also gets tied to Drake May for the foreseeable future. They're investing in the offensive line, right? They take Will Campbell. And I think that this offense has some upward momentum. So I like Trevion Henderson and kind of what he has his future attached to. Now, moving on from that, let's get to our 108 here, our wide receiver 3, Emeka Egbuka. I think this is a good time to step away and have a heart-to-heart here about landing spot discourse. I know that the premise of this video is the NFL draft just happened. Let's rank these players. And all fresh in our minds right now is landing spot. It's where these players went, how clear of a path to targets is there, which one of these offenses are even good, and just kind of, I just want to sort of put out a PSA to just pump the brakes a little bit. I think landing spot certainly does matter, but I think it's a little bit overrated, and here's why. This is a good thing to just look back on. If you overvalued landing spots, it would have led you to do Xavier Worthy over Brian Thomas Jr. and Brock Bowers last year, right? Xavier Worthy obviously attached to Pat Mahomes. Brian Thomas Jr. Was kind of in a murky situation with the Jaguars. You had Brock Bowers. Nobody liked the Raiders situation, right? Michael Mayer's there. They got nothing at quarterback. Paris Campbell over A.J. Brown. At that point in time in A.J. Brown's career, he's a rookie. He's going to Marcus Mariota and the Titans, who are very low volume. And you had Paris Campbell, who was tied to Andrew Luck for the foreseeable future, and then Andrew Luck retires. Then, of course, you had CEH over JT because CEH went to the Chiefs. You had Jalen Reagor over Jefferson because Jalen Reagor had no target competition, whereas Justin Jefferson had Adam Thielen, and Jefferson also had a tough, projectable role as a mainly slot guy in college. Then you had Sky Moore over Olave, where Sky Moore goes to the Chiefs, Olave to the Saints, and people did have Sky Moore over Olave. Now, I'm not even saying that I am, not guilty of any of these in terms of rankings. I'm just saying that it's good to look back on because it's not everything. These situations in the NFL are fluid. Contracts come up. Players get hurt. Things happen. At the end of the day, what I kind of perceive as things that matter, it is my conviction in the player's talent, then it is draft capital, and then it's landing spot as a tiebreaker, right? Draft capital is how high did you get drafted? Landing spot's how you fit in within the offense. And I think there's also an added caveat that I think landing spot matters more for running back, quarterback, tight end than it does for wide receiver. And here's why. Quarterback, running back, tight end. Most of the time, there's only one of those on the field, right? There's only one quarterback. There's only one running back. Sometimes there's just two tight ends, but to be an elite tight end, you have to be the one. For wide receivers, it's different. There's 3 to 5 of them on the field in any given play, and you have to get open and command the target. So even being on the field with other good players, you can still earn your keep if you're talented, right? You have to get open, earn the target, be efficient after earning that target, and that's how you see players emerge despite not having very clear depth charts to climb. So especially at wide receiver, when it comes to Emeka Egbuka, I'm not going to get caught up in, Mike Evans is already there. Chris Godwin's already there. Let me lower this player all the way down. Because when it comes to Emeka Egbuka, he was my pre-draft 108, and he's a really strong prospect. And I don't think that you want to look past the player's talent because you can't really trace out how he gets a certain amount of targets in year one. At the end of the day, we want to draft good players, and he happens to be on a good team, right? Baker Mayfield has been good the past few years. This has been an offense that has produced the last few years. And Jason Licht at GM has drafted well the past few years. So I think that it's a little bit over the top to now move Egbuka all the way down because you can't really see how he gets there. Talent just wins out in the NFL, and I want to bet on talent. With Emeka Egbuka, he grades out really well in the prospect model where I'm even being, I'm having some humility, right? He's an elite wide receiver prospect. I have him ranked below Tet, who's a gold. I have him ranked below Trevion Henderson, who's a gold. But this is as low as I can get, all right? I've factored in the landing spot. This is it. 107, that's as good as I can go because this is an elite wide receiver prospect up there with a guy like, Calvin Ridley, Drake London. He is really, really solid. In his entire career at Ohio State, which I think is funny, he's produced next to high-end NFL studs. Olave, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith this past year. It is nothing new to get into a crowded wide receiver room for Emeka Egbuka, and I think that he can produce. He's going to be kind of the next iteration in the next era, right, when Mike Evans, kind of sails off into the sunset. Godwin's getting a little bit older. He's also coming off of a major injury. And again, I just don't want to overthink it because he's a good player. I think passing up on a good player because someone else landed in a prettier landing spot, I think it is a mistake. So that's about as low as I can put Emeka Egbuka. Now, moving on to our 109, my tight end one, and I will say, over the entire process, I've had both tight ends back-to-back without much conviction in either of them because they're both really weird prospects. And I will say that this takes us to the next tier, and this is where it gets really flat. I'll be honest, this is a pick I'd like to trade out of. This is our 109 right here, right? Colston Loveland. If I could trade out of the 109, I would, because you're going to see here, we're going to have a flat tier that expands all the way to the 203. So if I can move from the 109 to the 203 and net a first, or even if I have to add to the 109 to do that, I absolutely would. Now, when it comes to Colston Loveland versus Tyler Warren, and we'll actually kind of talk about these players together because tight ends are tricky, man. And I've talked about this a lot, either on this channel or other channels. some of the best tight end prospects, right? Kyle Pitts, Eric Ebron, Noah Fant, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid. A lot of these guys, they don't work out, and there's not really a rhyme or reason, and everybody kind of emerges in different ways in college. So this is just kind of showing you adjusted scrimmage yards per team play. So this is just year by year in college. How much of the total offense are you making up on a per play basis? And you can see Loveland is much more like Bowers. That's not to say that he's the better prospect for sure. I'm just more so saying that Loveland's more of a traditional, pretty prospect, and Tyler Warren's a little bit more interesting, where Loveland, you don't really expect anything from year one from a tight end, but year two, above this dotted line of an average top 12 tight end, and then he's right there neck and neck with Bowers in year three in terms of just being the engine of an offense. Well, for Tyler Warren, he's below the dotted line every year, and then year five, his peak is higher than any peak Brock Bowers ever had. Now, of course, if you put Brock Bowers on Penn State and you let him stay until year five, he could probably do something crazy too, but I'm just saying, you have to kind of weigh Loveland's like analytical steady Eddie profile versus Warren's like monster peak. And I'm not really buying into all of the, Tyler Warren couldn't beat out Theo Johnson or Bretton Strange. Well, the thing is that he had a monstrous season in his final year, and that stands for something. For me, I've had them neck and neck as these two different prospects we don't have athletic testing for. They both, of course, catch passes, and they both can block a little in line, with Tyler Warren being more of the complete tight end in that respect. But for me, the tiebreaker, this is where you can go to landing spot as your tiebreaker. Have these players neck and neck the entire time. I lean Loveland for the fact that he now gets Ben Johnson, who handpicked him. And yes, I know that it's loaded, right? You have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. They drafted Luther Bird, and now you have Colston Loveland. Where does he shake out in the target totem pole? Who knows? But maybe DJ Moore's not long for this team. We still don't know how good Rome Odunze or how good Luther Burden is. And you have Caleb Williams, a young ascending quarterback, tied to Ben Johnson, who handpicked Colston Loveland. And to me, that means something. We've seen Ben Johnson make a stud out of Sam Laporta, and I just kind of like that environment more. I'm more bullish on them producing passing yards and an efficient offense, and Colston Loveland was drafted higher to this room. Now, when you get to Tyler Warren, you have Steichen, you have Daniel Jones, you have Anthony Richardson, but you also have Michael Pittman, you also have Josh Downs, you also have Alec Pierce, who's not nothing, and you also have A.D. Mitchell, who is someone that could take a big leap this year. So it's still a crowded receiver room, but then instead of having Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, it's Steichen, who could be fired this year, and it's A-Rich and Daniel Jones. So it's going to be like a low volume, low efficiency passing offense for Tyler Warren to be in. But again, the way these tiers work, if you want to flip them, you can. That's just where I land on the tight end debate. Now, moving on from that, this is where I have to put Jackson Dart. He's a tricky one. I'm not crazy about Dart. I've never been crazy about Dart, but when a quarterback gets drafted at the end of the first round, ranking him too low a lot of the times will look silly looking back on, right? Now, of course, Penix got way better draft capital, but if you just kind of disrespected Penix and you put him like the 205 and you ended up with none of them, you missed out on a huge value gain opportunity. And that's kind of what we can see here when I sort of parse through the rookie quarterback data in terms of since 2019 in rookie drafts, and then looking at their startup ADP in year one versus their startup ADP in year two. And all these guys are in this similar bucket as Dart, where they weren't drafted inside of the top 12. They're kind of like late one, early two rookie draft picks. And all of them besides Dwayne Haskins either kept value or gained value, with Drew Lock gaining 50 picks of startup ADP. Even Mac Jones gained 30 picks of startup ADP, and all of a sudden was a fourth-round startup pick, similar to what we saw from Michael Penix this past year. And I think that Jackson Dart does have that upside. When we look at kind of where he ranks in terms of my database, we have rushing fantasy points per snap, and these are quarterbacks drafted outside of the top 12, but still in the first round, so the back half of the first round. Of course, Lamar Jackson in his own bucket. But Jackson Dart, in terms of rushing fantasy points per snap, he's in that .0751 area where he just misses the mobile tag, but he's not, like you can see Mac Jones and Dwayne Haskins in the red there. He's fine. He's going to give you maybe a couple hundred yards on the ground. He's definitely a tough runner, can get a couple rushing touchdowns. So he's not a zero there. And then you do have the upside that maybe he is Jordan Love. That's really hefty expectations, but even if he can be like 85% of Jordan Love, that's huge. But I will say the one thing he has going for him is that Brian Daboll's job hinges on Jackson Dart. If Jackson Dart doesn't work out, Brian Daboll's probably fired. Brian Daboll, to me, is one of the better offensive play callers in the NFL. And then also you have Malik Neighbors as his number one option. So a lot of things going for him there, and there's a lot of opportunity for Jackson Dart to gain a lot of value in your Dynasty League. Then, at the 112 in this same tier, we have R.J. Harvey. he goes late second round to the Broncos. He is my RB5. And this is one where I'm actually disagreeing with my model. Now, I know I'm bouncing all over the place, right? Like some of these I'm overvaluing landing spot. Some of them I'm undervaluing landing spot. But again, I'm trying to operate under nuance. And when it comes to the model, and I've gotten this critique in the past, it's like, oh, well, your model says this. How come you don't listen to it? The point of the model isn't to just sort by highest grade and then just submit my rankings. It's to, this is one factor in a bunch of factors, right? We're looking at the model. We're looking at landing spot. We're looking at what the market might think in a year from now. There's a lot of things going on. And I think with RJ Harvey, we're going to kind of do the 8 Mile thing. I'm going to show you what the model and what the numbers don't like about RJ Harvey, but then explain why I like him and why I have him this high. This is really high for a bronze running back prospect. These are round 2 running backs in my prospect model sorted by the least RS grade. So these are the worst rated prospects at running back to go in the second round. It is Kenny Irons, it is Montario Hardesty, it is Daniel Thomas, then RJ Harvey, then Monty Ball, then Brandon Jackson, and then we don't get into like a good tier or a good pocket until it's Carlos Hyde, Shane Vereen, Miles Sanders, Eddie Lacy area. But even then, it's a lot of landmines. And one of the biggest issues is that pretty much the reason the model doesn't like him is he's a good athlete, but he's not like a freakazoid athlete. And then on top of that, he is 24 years old on draft day, and he didn't produce until later on in his career. If you look at just 23 years or older in terms of running backs drafted in round 2, it is Carlos Hyde, Toby Gerhart, Kenny Irons, Montario Hardesty, Daniel Thomas, Brian Leonard, and RJ Harvey. So that is kind of what is bringing him down from an analytical perspective. But the thing you have to understand with RJ Harvey, he was a quarterback recruit, transfers to running back, I think he got hurt early on, and then he's a late producer at UCF. We're also in a different time now where later production is a little bit more common. And on top of that, he lands to the Broncos. And that's the biggest point. First of all, he gets second-round draft capital, which is a big deal in the modern NFL. He gets drafted ahead of Caleb Johnson. And when Sean Payton handpicks a running back, that means something. This is a great tweet from Denver Broncos 365. Sean Payton has only spent a top 100 pick on a running back 4 times. Reggie Bush, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, and now RJ Harvey. And when you look at RotoViz, this is a great little chart or table that Sean Siegel put in his most recent rookie class breakdown over on RotoViz. He's great. He's like a great off-the-wall kind of look at Dynasty rookie rankings where he has RJ Harvey like 107, and then he'll have like Igbuka like middle of the second. He's all over the place. He does not care about ADP, but it's great to look at. But when it comes to what Sean Payton does with his running game, over 17 seasons from 06 to 2023, I don't have 2024 data right now, over 17 seasons, 12 of them, he ranked 1 or 2 in total running back PPR points. That's what it's sorted by, right? So you can see, or no, it's sorted by year, but PPR, that's just like how much points per game is he getting from his running back position every single year, and he generates a ton of that. Now, last year, we kind of chased Denver running backs because of that, but of course, Javonte wasn't good, and he just flattened that out across Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte, Audric Estime, even for a little bit there. I think like Blake Watson was in the mix. I think he had somebody else in the mix as well. I think it was Tyler Beatty or something he had in the mix. But now he is handpicked with meaningful draft capital RJ Harvey. And to me, that moves the needle enough to say, well, his analytics aren't great, but as a running back, where I am weighing the landing spot much more, he has an opportunity to hit the ground running out the gate. And when you peel back the curtain, right, my model goes back to 07 for running backs. So maybe it's not fully, it could be better, right? I could move it up. Every year we get more data, and every year I get more likely to, right? With wide receiver, I turn back the clock, and I've only done it since 2017. I will be doing that for running back soon. So when we look closer at his efficiency metrics, he gets the draft capital. And then if you want to say, oh, well, he's old and the production's bad, at least he has efficiency to fall back on, right? In terms of this entire list, he is green across the board in terms of missed tackles forced per touch. These are the running backs drafted on day 2 for this 2025 class. Green in missed tackles forced per touch, green in yards after contact per attempt, chunk rate, breakaway rate, elusiveness rating, receiving fantasy points per snap. He catches passes as well. So if you're not going to crush in the model, you need to catch passes, you need to be explosive. That's what he is. He's 5'8", 205 pounds, runs 4.4 speed, tests really well in the explosive drills like vertical and broad jump. And he's somewhere again on this Achane, Gibbs, James Cook type spectrum that's almost like the meta in the modern NFL. So you should be, I know people are going to throw out the Sean Payton Joker stuff, but I think that it is worth overlooking some of the warts on his profile. Now, after that, we get to the 201. Now, I want to say, right, we're going to have this is going to be a tough turn for people to stomach, okay? But we're going to have the 201 be Luther Burden. I do want to say we're going to have running back, wide receiver, running back. And I'll just kind of come out and say it's going to be Harvey, Burden, Matthew Golden, Caleb Johnson. And what is going to come down for me at this 111 to 202 range is, am I contending or am I not? If you're contending, go ahead. Take RJ Harvey. Go ahead and take Caleb Johnson. Get the immediate running back production. But if you're not contending and you're just trying to build value and you can't get a future first, then I'm fine just taking Luther Burden, taking Matthew Golden, and storing that value on your roster at receiver. We just saw a year from Owen Dunze and a year from Xavier Worthy, where both of them didn't really play all that well, and they still held value just fine. I think that wide receivers are sneaky, one of the higher floor positions you can draft in a Dynasty rookie draft. So for Luther Burden, that's why I'm fine with him here. Now, people are not going to like Luther Burden this high because he is one of these guys, like Colston Loveland, goes to the Bears, has a rough landing spot where there are a lot of mouths to feed. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, who they just drafted, and now Luther Burden. But as I said before, wide receivers, I'm more willing to look past it because there's going to be 3 or 4 of them on the field at the same time. And I'm not so certain how this pecking order pans out long term, right? We don't know how long each of these receivers are going to stay there for. Could Luther Burden come in and be amazing on day one? We truly don't know. No one thought Brian Thomas Jr. was going to come into the league and be as good as he was. All these players have a spectrum and an upside and a downside, and I just really liked Luther Burden, the prospect. I had him as the 111 pre-draft. I now have him post-draft as my 201. So I'm moving him down, but only so much. This is a guy that I liked pre-draft, and I don't really want to move him down much further. In terms of where he grades in the model, he is a gold wide receiver prospect, sort of similar to Judkins, where there is this value pocket of wide receivers that go early on round 2. This is round 2 receivers drafted by pick 40, sorted by RS grade. So he is in this sweet spot. Elijah Moore was pretty dang good as a rookie and in his second year, but he sort of flamed out. But you have T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey, Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, and Deebo Samuel. And even Curtis Samuel's not a bad hit in this range. So he still grades out really well. His year 2 was really strong, and I do love the upside of what Ben Johnson has in store for Luther Burden in this offense. Next up at 202, we have Matthew Golden, my wide receiver 5 off the board. And this is about as far as you can disrespect a first-round wide receiver, right? This is somebody, when we look at the grades, in terms of his quality as a first-round prospect, it's not super strong, but it's not terrible, right? There's a lot of busts on this list, right? You have Kadarius Toney, Xavier Legette looked pretty rough this year, but you have Brandon Ayuk, DJ Moore, Jordan Addison as some guys to look at as his upside. But in terms of like the market being lower on Matthew Golden, it makes some sense. Again, he's in this range of guys like Jalen Reagor, Jahan Dotson, N'Keal Harry, Quentin Johnston, Rashad Bateman, Treylon Burks. It's a lot of hit and miss, but again, his value should be pretty high post year 1. And I will say in terms of offensive environments, yes, it's messy, right? Where it's like Christian Watson off an ACL, it's Jaden Reed, it's Romeo Dobbs, Dontavion Wicks, Bo Melton. They draft Savion Williams in the 3rd round. There's a lot going on in this receiver room, and they do rotate these receivers as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but also Matt LaFleur, the certain thing is that Matt LaFleur has had a above average to great offense pretty much every year he's been in Green Bay, and Jordan Love is a good quarterback to be attached to long term. So Matthew Golden, that's about as low as you can put him. But again, if you're contending and you'd rather immediate running back production, you could certainly go Caleb Johnson, who is my 203 as my RB6. He goes round 3 to Pittsburgh. And I just want to sort of point out and remember here, he goes 3rd round, and these are his comps through RotoViz. It's Zach Moss, it's Carlos Hyde. Of course, LaShore, he tears his Achilles before he even gets to play. But I think Carlos Hyde and Zach Moss are reasonable expectations. More of a compiler, volume sponge, kind of like a fresh-legged Najee is how I would put it. But Najee did have, like 70-plus catch upside. I'm not sure Caleb has that kind of receiving upside, but I do love this landing spot. And again, if you are contending, feel free to take Caleb Johnson as high as up here in this range of late first, because I do love the scheme fit. Now, when I had Ray G on the channel, Ray GQ, and we talked about Caleb Johnson's zone running tendencies. And it was a little bit of a fear. When you look at his profile, this is via fball_insights on Twitter. You can see in terms of gap and zone distribution of his touches, he had 80% in a zone scheme. That is by far the highest discrepancy of all of these running backs. But he goes with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the perfect fit for that style of runner, where if we look at fantasy points and we make the minimum 100 or more carries and we sort by percentage of attempts in a zone concept, you have 2 Falcons, 1 Saint, 2 Steelers. These are the guys who run zone at the highest rates in the NFL. And you can also see these success rates here where Algier is 58%, Bijan 60%, Kamara 54%, Warren 53%, Najee way below everyone at 43.9%. So this is essentially Arthur Smith handpicking a zone running back to fill in for Najee Harris and get that success rate up to 55% plus. And I believe Caleb Johnson can do that. Now, he's in a little bit of a touch squeeze where Jaylen Warren should take a lot of the passing down work and some of the rushing touches, but this is a guy that they're going to feed, right? The way that the Steelers work, they're one of these rare franchises where it's historic, and you start to compare him to Le'Veon Bell and Najee Harris and Rashard Mendenhall, and the idea of using a bell cow and establishing the run, and he fits all of that really well. So really, really good scheme fit. It's just the push and pull of really nice landing spot versus round 3 running back hit rate of Trey Sermon, Tyrion Davis-Price, and a lot of guys, like even Rachaad White was okay. We'll see. I could eat my words on him at 203, but that's about as high as I can justify putting him. But again, if you are contending, feel free to move him up and prioritize him. After that, we get to the mid-second tier. So now we are at the 204. So again, the 109 through 203 to me is really, really flat. If you wanted to put Harvey at 109, you could. If you wanted to put Caleb at 109, you could. So again, if I can move from the 109 and get into the early second, 202, 201-ish area, that would be my preference. But at the 204, to me, this is a pretty big tier break to kind of the middle of the second to me. And first up, I will have Jaden Higgins as my 204. So now we're in a tier with day 3 running backs and lesser quarterback and wide receiver profiles. And Jaden Higgins is similar to Luther Burden in that he is in this sweet spot, right, of second-round receivers taken by pick 40, but he is a lower graded prospect, right? Where Luther Burden is a 8.38 RS grade, Higgins is 7.38, but that is still in that Michael Pittman, Ladd McConkey, Deebo Samuel area. My biggest concern, though, is his reception perception. Again, the model is one of many inputs. You need to have context on top of it. And when it comes to Jaden Higgins, what Matt Harmon has to say about him, he's right across the board. He's not creating separation on the outside, and he would like him to be a big slot inside. And the issue is with Jaden Higgins is that is the conundrum. He gets drafted to a team that drafts his teammate that is a 70% plus slot alignment guy in his entire college career in Jalen Noel, and then they also already have Christian Kirk, who is a predominantly slot receiver. So it seems like they drafted him to play on the perimeter, which is where he doesn't work out. Now, of course, reception perception isn't the end-all, be-all in the same idea that my model isn't the end-all, be-all. So it's somewhere in between, right, where he can probably separate a little bit, though you'd prefer him in the slot, but his profile on paper looks good. He's drafted in this sweet spot of players. He is, to me, a very similar prospect to what Keon Coleman was last year, and this is probably a fine spot for him to be in. Now, moving on from that, let's get to the 205, my wide receiver 7. We have Trey Harris. He goes pick 55 to the Chargers, and this is the area of receivers that he falls under. You can see here, it's not as pretty. He is a silver wide receiver prospect. Jaden Higgins is the last gold wide receiver prospect on the board for me. We now move down to silver. And we'll talk about Jack Bech here in a second, but Trey Harris is in this area. These are round 2 receivers with a silver grade. It's not a great list. In terms of the hits, you're looking at Chase Claypool, Rashee Rice, I guess DJ Chark, I guess Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and that's kind of it. So just to pour some cold water on Trey Harris. And this is what I want to say about Trey Harris is, again, the landing spot thing. I think overrating landing spot, especially at wide receiver, is a dangerous game. I'm seeing people rank him over Luther Burden straight up. I just cannot get there. In terms of prospect quality, to me, it's not very close, right? Luther Burden, 3-year, early declare, monster year 2. Trey Harris is a backloaded prospect who didn't really produce until his final few seasons. He's a high-end efficiency guy, but he's also a contested target guy as well, where a lot of his targets are contested. He's not really creating separation, but he is a fun profile for this offense, right? He goes to the Chargers. He's attached to Justin Herbert. That is really sexy, and he is a contested catch guy built for Herbert. So the fit's amazing. It's all there. I just would be cautious, especially pointing to his yards per out run. His yards per out run is great, right? He is at a 3 yards per out run for his entire college career. But if you look at the list of wide receivers with a 3 or better yards per out run over their entire college career, drafted in the second round of the NFL draft, it is Trey Harris, Dwayne Eskridge, Anthony Miller, T. Higgins, Laviska Shenault. So maybe he's a T. Higgins matchup for Justin Herbert and is this beautiful downfield contested catch receiver, or there's a lot there not to like in that mix. So he is, to me, a very boom-bust prospect, which is probably fine in this range. I would just caution against pushing him up to like the 202, 201, 1-2 turn area. Then at the 206, we have Basil Tootin. He goes to the Jaguars, early fourth round to the Jaguars, and he is our last silver or better running back prospect. He joins this list that is not bulletproof whatsoever, but this is where we're getting to. This is where things start to fall off a little bit in your rookie draft, and we're starting to get into shaky bets here, where if you look at day 3 running backs to get a silver grade in the RS model, there's a lot of misses, right? Kenny Gainwell, Isaiah Spiller, Jeremy McNichols, Antonio Pittman, Robert Turbin, Will Shipley last year, Deuce Vaughn before that. But you do have some big hits, right? Devontae Freeman, you have Lamar Miller, you have Jordan Howard, you have Aaron Jones. That's what you're hoping for with Basil Tootin. And I do love his fit on the Jaguars, right? He gets Liam Cohen, who's a great play caller, and Gladstone, the new Jaguars GM, actually used Basil Tootin's name as a priority target in his interviews to become the Jaguars GM. This is via Josh Norris on Twitter. He's watching all of these press conferences and clips, and he cuts them all up. They'll have a video on Underdog about that soon, but it's really cool to see. So he is going to be a featured part of this offense. I get that they have Travis Etienne. I get they have Tank Bigsby, but other guys drafted those players. This guy was handpicked by Liam Cohen, handpicked by James Gladstone, and to me, that's what's important. And when you look at Basil Tootin, he's similar to RJ Harvey, where he's not going to wow you with his analytical profile or early production, but when we get to day 3 like this, I like looking at the efficiency metrics. He is among the top 8 running backs drafted, right? So all the running backs we've talked about, plus Tootin, plus Scatabo. He is 3rd in missed tackles forced per touch, 2nd in yards after contact per attempt, 2nd in chunk rate, 3rd in breakaway run rate, 3rd in elusiveness rating, 1st in receiving fantasy points per snap, so he can catch passes, and 1st in speed score. So he's athletic, he catches passes, and he's efficient, and he's explosive, and he runs a 4.32, and there's a lot to like for Basil Tootin. At the 207, RB8, we have Cam Scatabo. He gets taken really early in the 4th round as well. Now, he's not a silver running back on day 3, but he's still a priority bronze running back, and this is just the range that we're talking about here. Now, I will say I've gotten this question in the past, like, would you take a silver wide receiver or a bronze running back? Once you get to this point, it's all kind of a jumble. Like, there's not really a conversion system of, like, silver wide receiver is better than bronze running back. It's just across the board. It's really more so position versus position. So now we're just in the kind of, I guess you could say, dumpster diving territory of running back is what it comes down to, but running back is running back, and if they get an opportunity, that's still a big hit for your dynasty team. And with Scatabo, it's a similar deal. Among the top 8 running backs drafted, he is 2nd in missed tackles forced per touch. He is tied for 2nd in chunk rate, 2nd in elusiveness rating, 2nd in receiving fantasy points per snap, and then 1st in BMI. So he has size, he's thick, pass catching explosiveness, tackle breaking ability. That's all really exciting. And if we remember earlier from the Mike Clay 2025 projections, he is at RB39, really not that far behind Trevion Henderson, right? All he has to compete with is Tyrone Tracy, who's not going to ever be a 25-plus touch back. It should be some kind of even split, but they can both catch passes. Scatabo's the better pure runner. He's the bigger runner. So we could see, that, like, very easily, it's easy to talk yourself into Scatabo becoming kind of this David Montgomery in this offense, and then Tyrone Tracy being kind of a passing down specialist. But there is obviously room for them both to exist. There's room for Tyrone Tracy to be the one here. There's a lot of things. It's all fluid, but he will have a crack at the RB1 job on day 1, which is exciting. Then, 20th overall at the 208, we have Jack Besh. He is, of course, in that same area of wide receiver as Trey Harris, right? We're talking silver, round 2 guys. It's not the best hit rate in the world, but when we add a little more context, he did have a glowing review from Matt Harmon on reception perception. I should have him on later this week. Definitely make sure to check out reception perception now that all these guys have been drafted. And you can see here he wins at the 85th percentile versus man, 60th percentile versus zone, 91st percentile versus press, and he lines up everywhere. He was lined up as an X receiver at TCU, I think 73.6% of the time, and then you go back to his days at LSU where he was like lining up in the slot and in line as a tight end for a little bit. He has all this versatility. He gets open. He looks decent in the prospect model. He gets round 2 draft capital. He goes to a fine spot with Geno Smith. Jacoby Myers is already there. Brock Bowers is already there, but there's going to be routes for him to run on the field and make an impact early. Then our last player in this tier, I believe this is our 210 here, is Tyler Shuck, quarterback for the Saints. He goes 40th overall to the Saints. And say whatever you want about Shuck, but he's going to start games. I know he's like 25 years old. I know that his profile is not amazing, but this is a Saints reporter, Nick Underhill. Somebody asked, do you feel certain he'd be starting? He says yes. Then somebody replies, Mickey won't speak on it, but you think Carr is starting week 1? Nick Underhill then says, I have to say no. This is a Saints reporter saying that he believes Tyler Shuck is going to be the week 1 starter. And if that's the case, you're going to make a profit by taking him in the late second. That's where he's going to go. People don't want to touch this pick, but if he starts games, he's going to get an initial boost there. And if he shows any promise, quarterbacks run Dynasty Fantasy Football, and he could easily have a huge rise. Now, in terms of the research I was doing on rookie draft pick hit rates, if we break it down by rookie picks, right? So a first-round rookie pick quarterback, a first-round rookie pick running back, right? These aren't NFL draft picks, rookie picks. Quarterbacks drafted in the second round of your rookie draft are one of the best investments you can make. They have a low bust rate compared to the other positions. They have a high hit rate and a high smash rate where you have guys like, Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert was an early second. Of course, those are back in the days where quarterbacks weren't as valued as highly, but you have Jalen Hurts as a monster hit there. Even guys like Davis Mills and Sam Howell and guys who just start a few games. Drew Lock is one as well. They gain a ton of value. Tyler Shuck is in that same bucket. He also has some decent rushing upside as well. Of course, he's not up there with Jalen Milroe or anything, but he is in that Jackson Dart scrambler area, which should be good for his fantasy upside. And then we get to our late second tier. These are late seconds, early thirds. This is where things really fall off. Like this is I don't even really want these late seconds, to be honest with you. But at the 210 here, we have Jalen Milroe. My QB4, 22nd ranked player. He goes to Seattle. And the only reason I have him here is just because of the upside at quarterback. He's still, even with round 3 draft capital, he is the last gold prospect on our list. He fits this list. I've been saying it all offseason. He fits this list with Jalen Hurts, Colin Kaepernick, and Russell Wilson as the only gold quarterback prospects to not get drafted inside of the first round. Now, of course, this hinges on him actually getting an opportunity. There's a very good case that he is Malik Willis. That is his floor, that he gets no opportunity or he gets on the field and he doesn't look good at all. Like this could go up in flames, but if things do hit for him, he is the upside to be a difference maker in fantasy football. And I think at this point in rookie drafts where we're just taking dart throws on round 3 receivers and other, day 3 running back profiles, this is where I'm fine taking Milroe, because the minute he gets named a starter, you have a window to sell for a profit. And then also if he's scoring points, you can now put him in your lineup. And if he's scoring points and he looks good, all of a sudden you have a real dynasty asset on your hands. Then at the 211 and the 212, we will double up here with Kyle Williams as my 211, Jalen Noel as my 212. These are my wide receiver 9 and wide receiver 10. These are two guys that grade out really well in the prospect model. It's just that they are so close, right? We're talking decimals here with Jack Besh, Trey Harris versus Jalen Noel and Kyle Williams. At that point, I will defer to draft capital and give these second round picks an edge because they're more likely to make an impact earlier on in their careers. But Noel and Williams are the two highest graded gold prospects or silver prospects in this class. So I'll have them here. Both guys are loved by film evaluators. They can get separation, and Kyle Williams will be attached to Drake May, which is great, and he has this ability to get open as probably one of their only receivers that can really do that all that well. Of course, you do have Stephon Diggs, but he's coming off an ACL. What does he look like? And then, of course, Jalen Noll's a little bit more tricky. Again, we have a few guys in the running to play in this slot role. Maybe Jalen Noll, they have a similar vision to what they had with Tank Dell, where Tank Dell was kind of looked at as a slot-only player. He gets to Houston, he plays on the outside, he dominates. We'll see how Jalen Noll fits in, but both of these guys, strong prospect profiles attached to good quarterbacks in C.J. Stroud and Drake May. And then for our last flyer as my 301, this one's a little off the wall, but it's Harold Fannin. I'm still holding on. He was my 212 pre-draft. He gets all the draft capital you could ask for. He goes third round to the Cleveland Browns. It's a little bit murky, right, where they have Jerry Jeudy, they have Elijah Moore, they have Cedric Tillman, they have David Njoku, but David Njoku's contract is up after this year. The way that they're kind of building this team, I don't know that they're going to want to re-sign him after that, and maybe this is a test run where Harold Fannin, if he looks good, he could be their tight end long term, and then also he has some upside to play out of the slot as a receiver, and then all of a sudden if he plays full-time wide receiver, you're getting that production in your tight end spot. And I just love the upside that Harold Fannin offers. I think that Kevin Stefanski has a role for him in mind. This is somebody that had 1,500 plus yards receiving this past year in college. I just want to bet on that profile. But that is going to do it for us today. As always, if you want access to my full top 50, check out Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. All of the prospect model stuff that I reference in this video, they're all live on the Patreon and in my Discord via the Patreon that you can look at. Oh, this is what the RS grades look like all the way back to 07 and what the wide receiver model looks like. And you can ask me questions in there too if anything kind of sticks out when it comes to that. And then, of course, my rookie rankings and then my dynasty rankings will be out by tomorrow night. So all of that is there. If you can support there, just leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like